We always think about the potential of AI changing the future, but what about the potential of AI changing the past?
For 3,000 years, a message lay broken, scattered in distant museums. No one could read it or piece it together. Then AI arrived, the machine that reconstructed a Babylonian hymn lost to time. The danger was not in the message, but in the machine. AI is now changing the way we uncover the past. What does this mean for humanity? Join us as we unravel this ancient Babylonian mystery. The Babylonian hymn. For nearly 3,000 years, the Babylonian hymn existed as fragmented pieces of stone, with no mysterious aura and no foreboding message. These fragments were scattered with time and held far apart, waiting to be unified again. The hymn was a public text written around 1000 BCE. It was a celebration of Babylon, a reflection on order, devotion, and restraint. It was meant to be read, remembered, and repeated. Instead, it was shattered by war, decay, and the slow collapse of the empire. What survived were pieces containing single lines and partial verses. The fragments were stored in different museums and studied in isolation, never quite telling their whole story. Scholars recognized their value early on, but that was not enough. Without certainty, reconstruction risked invention, so the text remained unfinished for decades, hoping to one day know the mystery of the stones in facts and not speculation. The wait ended with the arrival of artificial intelligence. AI did not translate the tablet in the way headlines suggest. It did not understand poetry or interpret meaning. What it did was more disruptive. It compared vast amounts of data at once, analyzed sign patterns, writing styles, and repeated phrasing across thousands of known cuneiform texts. It noticed structural similarities no individual scholar could reasonably detect across dispersed collections. Fragments, once considered unrelated, were suddenly linked. Lines long thought incomplete found their counterparts elsewhere. Human experts reviewed the matches, accepted some, rejected others, and slowly the hymn took shape. For the first time, the song could be read as a whole. It really was a song. It was a hymn to Babylon itself, a portrait of a city at its height, proud of its order and deeply aware of how fragile that order could be. The warning within the text was directed inward, not forward. It cautioned ancient citizens against excess, imbalance, and the illusion of permanence. Why then were reactions to the discovery alarming? Clearly, the ancients hadn't hidden a dooming message in stone to be read many years to come, as they often do in fiction. What then is the issue? The answer lies in how the hymn was assembled and discovered. Artificial neural, only the world's most powerful and potential invention, surpassing the imagination of our past, and sometimes even us. The Babylonian hymn became a demonstration more than it was a recovered text. It was a proof that machines could now participate in rebuilding the past. What once took lifetimes could now happen within years. Minutes maybe, with time and more advancement. What once depended on slow comparison and limited access could now be accelerated beyond human pace. When you think about it, that is uneasy. Humans aren't the smartest in the class anymore. AI has made its own history by showing how quickly silence could be reversed. AI removed a barrier that had always slowed discovery. The past was no longer powerful. In fact, it had been defeated. Because if one hymn could be reconstructed this way, others would follow. From letters to laws, records, and entire narratives we assumed were lost. The question was no longer whether the past could speak again, but how often, how fast, and under whose guidance. The Babylonian song returned, and humans read it, even though they were not supposed to. History has crossed into a new phase, one where machines and man define the world. But what consequences does the hymn present? Let's find out. Rewriting how history is written. History has always moved at human pace. Every discovery, fragment, and inscription has been measured against the limits of time, patience, and perspective. Scholars compared, debated, and doubted before committing anything to record. Knowledge accumulated slowly. Errors could be corrected. Interpretations could be challenged. Discovery was deliberate, and there was space for skepticism, hesitation, and reflection. The past demanded respect, because to understand it, you had to respect it. Then artificial intelligence came and changed everything. With the reconstruction of the Babylonian hymn, historians and archaeologists realized that the rules of engagement had shifted. What once took decades could now happen in months. Fragments that had languished in museum drawers for centuries could be compared with the speed of an AI chatbot. Patterns that would have taken generations to recognize now emerged at machine speed. The past no longer waited for human comprehension. Machines had caught up with it. AI does not simply process information. It recognizes repetition in language, structure in fragmented texts, and subtle stylistic signatures across separated collections. It maps connections across geography and time. In the case of the Babylonian hymn, lines held in museums thousands of miles apart were matched. Fragments long assumed unrelated were revealed as parts of the same composition. Suddenly, scholars were presented with possibilities they could not have imagined before. This acceleration and super pattern detection has profound implications. For centuries, discovery and interpretation followed a careful sequence. Find first, study second, interpret last. AI inverts this order. It suggests patterns and connections before humans have fully understood the pieces themselves. The act of interpretation is no longer entirely human. It is guided, directed, and in some ways constrained by the suggestions of algorithms. The speed of discovery begins to compete with the depth of understanding. The danger lies not in AI making mistakes. Machines are precise. They calculate, match, and predict. The danger lies in human reliance on the authority of AI's outputs. When a text is reconstructed digitally, it gains a form of legitimacy simply by existing. Historians may feel pressure to accept patterns suggested by the machine, even before the human mind has fully examined their meaning. Uncertainty has always been a safeguard in scholarship. The Babylonian hymn illustrates this tension. Multiple reconstructions were theoretically possible. AI narrowed the field to the most probable sequences, patterns, and alignments. Human scholars made the final decisions, but their choices were framed by the machine's outputs. Future students of history may encounter only the final reconstructed text without knowing the paths considered and discarded. The process that led to understanding is obscured, replaced by an appearance of certainty. This is a new kind of historical authority. It is not born of debate or consensus alone. It is co-authored by human judgment and computational suggestion. Scholars must now navigate an environment where digital reconstruction accelerates narrative formation, but also risks silencing doubt. Speed, once the enemy of error, becomes a double-edged sword. Quick connections can solidify interpretations that are plausible but not fully verified. The consequences extend to education. When reconstructed texts enter classrooms, students may assume they are definitive. They may not question the process, the choices, or the assumptions embedded in digital reconstruction. Historical confidence can become premature, packaged with an unearned authority derived from computational efficiency. The line between discovery and interpretation becomes blurred. AI also shifts the way we value fragments. A piece of clay is no longer just an artifact. It is a node in a network of potential connections. Its importance is measured not only by content, but by how it interacts with other fragments digitally. Scholars are forced to reconsider priorities. What matters most is no longer only what the fragment says, but what the machine can reveal about its relationships to everything else. The Babylonian hymn represents the first major consequence of this transformation. History can speak clearly now, because AI can move faster, connect further, and reveal previously invisible patterns. But speed carries a subtle warning. The more we rely on AI, the more authority shifts from careful human reasoning to computational suggestion. The past can now speak faster than we can interpret it, and every fragment reconstructed digitally comes with the risk that speed may be mistaken for certainty. The question becomes, can we trust AI, especially when we can't catch up with its output? Before we dive into that, let's focus on another message from the Babylonian hymn: museums and cultural power. When the Babylonian hymn was decrypted, museums, long the unquestioned guardians of artifacts, found themselves at the center of a new reality. Possession of artifacts no longer guaranteed authority. A fragment in Baghdad and another in London could now be joined virtually, regardless of distance, borders, and international relations. Ownership had always been a clear line. A museum held an artifact, and it determined what could be seen, studied, or published. The fragment in the drawer belonged to the institution. Its story was told by the curators, interpreted by the scholars, protected by policy, but AI challenged all of that. Digital reconstruction does not care where a piece of clay resides. It does not respect treaties, acquisitions, or historical hierarchies. It doesn't stand in line to see the next exhibit. It evaluates patterns and possibilities, and joins fragments according to data alone. For the first time, authority was no longer tied to physical custody. This shift is subtle, but very profound. The museum that once controlled the narrative of a fragment may now find itself competing with institutions halfway across the world. A scholar in one country can digitally reconstruct a text that spans collections in 10 other countries. Interpretations that were once local, contained, and slow to circulate are now global, instantaneous, and public. Authority is dispersed. The lines of power are redrawn not through diplomacy or scholarship, but through technology. With this freedom comes responsibility. If ownership is no longer physical but virtual, who decides which reconstruction is valid? AI can suggest matches, propose sequences, and generate probabilities. Humans must still choose among them, yet every choice carries weight. Once fragments are digitally joined, once a reconstruction is accepted and published, it gains legitimacy. It enters the historical record, influencing scholarship, education, and public understanding. Disputed fragments, messy evidence, and alternative reconstructions risk being ignored because the AI-produced narrative appears coherent and authoritative. Museums now face ethical dilemmas that were invisible when fragments were isolated. Many pieces were acquired under circumstances now considered questionable, like colonial-era excavations, purchases from dealers with unclear provenance, or gifts from governments under political pressure. Digital reunification ignores these histories. It does not account for moral or legal considerations. Human scholars must reconcile the technology's efficiency with the tangled human realities behind the artifacts. The speed and scale of AI threatens to outpace reflection. Even beyond ethics, there is a subtle but significant cultural tension. AI can unite fragments without physical repatriation, yet the original context remains disrupted. A digital reconstruction can return the song, but it cannot return the artifact to the culture from which it originated. This raises questions about authenticity, access, and cultural stewardship. Who truly owns a fragment once its story can be reconstructed anywhere in the world? The Babylonian hymn is a test case. Its fragments were scattered, its story incomplete. AI reunited them, and the narrative that emerged is richer, clearer, and more widely accessible than ever before. Yet that very clarity exposes the fragile balance between technology, scholarship, and power. Museums, scholars, and governments must navigate uncharted territory. Every decision about reconstruction, publication, or access can amplify voices, silence others, or reshape history itself. Authority over the past is no longer absolute. It is shared, negotiated, and sometimes contested across digital networks that no single institution controls. Museums are losing their identities as the gatekeepers of fragments. They are now participants in a broader ecosystem where AI mediates relationships, bridges distances, and accelerates revelation. Their prestige, once guaranteed by possession, is now challenged by the transparency and reach of technology. The warning embedded in this shift is subtle, almost invisible. AI does not threaten institutions directly. It amplifies possibilities and demands our reflection. Museums, scholars, and policymakers are forced to ask uncomfortable questions, like, who decides what counts as history? What do we do now? The Babylonian hymn did not change the past, but the way it was reconstructed has changed everything about how the present manages history, and the quiet warning lingers. The past is no longer patient, and neither are the tools we use to understand it. This could change the future as we know it, but that's not all. Stay with us as we explore the fate of a profession slowly losing its relevance. The mechanized archaeology. Archaeology has always been measured by patience. Every dig, every cataloged artifact, every painstaking reconstruction required human limits. Time was important. Human hands and eyes determined what could be found, what could be understood, and what could be preserved. Scholars took their time to understand, and when the answers could not be found immediately, kept it for more research. These researches took months, years, decades. Artificial intelligence has arrived, and the rules have changed forever. The Babylonian hymn demonstrated what was possible when speed, computation, and pattern recognition were introduced into archaeology. Fragments scattered across continents, previously considered unrelated, could now be evaluated together. AI scanned cuneiform signs, handwriting styles, line patterns, and repeated structures. Pieces once thought lost or incomprehensible were reunited digitally. What would have taken decades now emerged within months. This acceleration is more than convenient. It transforms the very nature of archaeological work. The field is no longer confined to excavation sites, dust, and slow cataloging. Data becomes a form of excavation. Machines process immense archives of fragments, manuscripts, inscriptions, and ruins simultaneously. Connections invisible to human perception emerge, revealing structures and relationships previously unimaginable. The past is no longer static. It is responsive, malleable, and surprisingly fast. Remember that archaeologists controlled the pace and interpretation of discovery once. AI proposes possibilities that demand immediate attention. Every suggestion and potential reconstruction must be evaluated before momentum carries the narrative forward. Human intuition, reflection, and debate are no longer the sole arbiters of understanding. To put it this way, we are not alone anymore. The Babylonian hymn shows this tension clearly. Multiple reconstructions were possible. AI narrowed them to the most probable, based on patterns and historical knowledge. Scholars confirmed or rejected these sequences, but their decisions were framed by the algorithm's suggestions. The final narrative is a collaboration, but it is one in which the human participant is responding to the machine as much as the artifact. The balance of authority has shifted. There is also a subtle change in what counts as evidence. Traditional archaeology emphasizes provenance, context, and physical proximity. Artifacts are meaningful because of where they are found, how they relate to other objects, and the cultural context in which they exist. AI allows fragments separated by continents, stored in collections thousands of miles apart, to be treated as a single entity. Context becomes digital as well as physical. The rules governing interpretation are expanding, challenging long-standing assumptions about how cultures, histories, and civilizations are studied. This speed and reach bring risk. Rapid reconstructions can create narratives before they are fully understood. Plausible interpretations can solidify quickly, gaining authority simply because they are coherent and complete. The pace of revelation can outstrip the pace of reflection. AI does not judge meaning, significance, or nuance. It identifies patterns. Humans must supply interpretation, context, and ethical oversight. But the faster discoveries appear, the harder it becomes to question them. The hymn also raises questions about the scale of archaeology itself. Lost libraries, forgotten texts, and fragmented archives that would have been impossible for humans to process in one lifetime are now within reach. Entire civilizations, partially hidden by the fragility of time, can be reconstructed with unprecedented speed. The field is no longer about discovering artifacts, but discovering patterns, structures, and relationships across centuries and continents. The subtle warning is unavoidable. AI does not replace archaeologists, but it reshapes their role. Scholars must interpret faster, decide more often, and remain vigilant against overconfidence. Human patience, the historical safeguard, is no longer enough to keep pace with the capabilities of machines. The past is returning quickly, and our ability to understand it must evolve in tandem. The Babylonian hymn may have seemed like a single artifact, a simple hymn preserved across millennia, but its reconstruction signals a transformation for archaeology itself. Excavations, catalogs, and scholarly debates remain important, but they exist alongside a new form of discovery, one where AI identifies patterns, reconstructs fragments, and accelerates revelation. The field has entered a new era, one that demands not just skill and knowledge, but vigilance and adaptation. The real warning lies here. When the past is no longer patient, and archaeology will never move at the same slow, deliberate pace again, what's to be done but to adapt? Keep watching for something interesting. It's happened before. The Babylonian hymn was only the beginning. Across the world, fragments of the past that had long resisted human understanding are now revealing themselves under the careful guidance of artificial intelligence. The Dead Sea Scrolls provide a striking example. For decades, scholars labored over the fragments of these ancient texts, many too delicate to handle, scattered across institutions in Israel, Europe, and the United States. Piecing them together required painstaking manual comparison and careful preservation. Even then, gaps remained, leaving key parts of history hidden. In medieval Europe, palimpsests, meaning manuscripts that had been scraped clean and reused, have long confounded historians. Hidden beneath newer writing, these texts were thought lost forever. Scholars could glimpse traces of the original ink, but interpretation was slow, fragmentary, and tentative. AI now allows high-resolution scans to detect subtle variations in the underlying layers. Algorithms separate one layer from another, reconstruct the text, and suggest coherent sequences. The results are entire lost works, sometimes philosophical treatises, and other times poetry or legal records. AI is also revolutionizing the study of cuneiform, the script of Mesopotamia. Thousands of tablets can be digitally aligned to reveal repeated sequences, common stylistic elements, and historical patterns. Hieroglyphic inscriptions in Egypt, damaged by time or human interference, are receiving similar treatment. Even inscriptions scratched onto stone or pottery shards are being digitally matched and translated. The fragments themselves may never be physically reunited, yet AI ensures their stories can exist in a coherent form for the first time in millennia. While AI does not understand culture or meaning, it excels at noticing relationships, repetitions, and structures invisible to human perception. It suggests connections, aligns sequences, and narrows down plausible reconstructions. Human scholars still interpret the outputs, verify their accuracy, and place them in historical context. Machines reveal what humans cannot. Humans provide judgment and insight. There's one side effect to this power. Reconstruction at scale can outpace interpretation. Thousands of fragments can now be processed in a fraction of the time it once took. Lost narratives, entire libraries, and forgotten archives may suddenly appear, demanding immediate attention. Scholars must decide which reconstructions are valid, which interpretations to trust, and how to contextualize them before momentum carries the story into public knowledge. The pace of revelation is faster than ever, and the risk is that coherence may be mistaken for certainty. The Babylonian hymn fits neatly into this larger story. It is remarkable on its own, but it is also part of a pattern. AI has unlocked voices from the past all over the world. From scrolls to manuscripts, tablets to inscriptions, the technology is proving that no fragment is truly lost if patterns can be recognized. The speed, scale, and reach of these reconstructions challenge every assumption about how knowledge is discovered, verified, and preserved. The subtle warning emerges again. AI is not just a tool for discovery, it is a force. It accelerates research, expands possibility, and challenges traditional authority. Every fragment reconstructed digitally is a reminder that the past can respond at a speed humans cannot match, and that the future of historical understanding now depends on how carefully we integrate this technology with human judgment. Keep viewing to see the before AI stepped in. Before AI was used to unravel the Babylonian hymn, the fragment were a doomed cause. Scholars, staring at broken lines and incomplete symbols, began to imagine stories that might fit. Each fragment, isolated and silent, invited speculation. What was it? The uncertainty created fertile ground for theories that often told as much about modern imagination as ancient Babylon. Some believed the tablets contained prayers to the gods. Others argued they were proclamations of power, warnings directed at enemies or neighboring cities. A few scholars suggested they were moralistic texts, designed to instruct citizens in virtue and order. Every theory was plausible, because the evidence was partial. Each fragment could be read multiple ways, each gap in the text filled with conjecture. The more fragmented the material, the wider the space for speculation. There were those who imagined curses embedded in the clay, messages meant to shock, threaten, or punish. Speculations hinted at forbidden knowledge and ancient secrets. These stories captured public imagination far more than academic caution ever could. Without the full context, every line seemed portentous, each incomplete verse ominous. The fragments became symbols of mystery, rather than remnants of daily life in Babylon. This speculation was natural. Human beings crave meaning, even when the evidence is incomplete. The gaps in the text invited projection, imagination, and exaggeration. Historians, trying to reconstruct cultural practice from fragmentary sources, often leaned on existing assumptions or analogies from other texts. Some theories persisted because they were convenient or compelling, not necessarily accurate. Scholars debated, revised, and occasionally clung to old interpretations because the missing pieces could not confirm or contradict them. The Babylonian hymn, fragmented and scattered, exemplified this problem. Single lines suggested themes of caution or reflection, and without the rest of the text, those themes could be misread as warnings or threats. A reference to divine order could easily be interpreted as prophecy. A fragment celebrating civic pride might be read as hubris or menace. Every assumption was amplified by the incompleteness of the record. AI changed this landscape dramatically. Once the fragments were analyzed, aligned, and reconstructed digitally, the theories could be tested against the whole text. Lines that had once appeared threatening revealed themselves as devotional, reflective, or celebratory. The curse became guidance. The prophecy became a hymn. Patterns in repetition, phrasing, and structure clarified meaning that human interpretation alone could not achieve. Speculation gave way to reconstruction. Imagination gave way to evidence. Yet the prior theories are still important. They demonstrate how humans respond to uncertainty and absence. They show the instinct to fill gaps with narrative, to seek meaning when information is limited. Without the fragments, the Babylonian hymn would have remained a canvas for conjecture. Scholars would have continued to debate the purpose and significance of lines they could barely read, imagining threats, warnings, or hidden intentions that never existed. These theories also reveal a deeper truth about scholarship itself. Understanding the past is as much about our own expectations as about historical reality. What we think we see often says more about our desires, fears, or biases than about the civilization under study. The fragments became mirrors, reflecting the questions, anxieties, and cultural imagination of modern interpreters. The AI-assisted reconstruction did not just recover the text, it reshaped the conversation. Theories once considered credible were confirmed, refined, or dismissed. Scholars could finally see what Babylon intended, rather than what they had projected onto broken clay. The hymn became coherent, its message clear, and the fragments ceased to be mere prompts for speculation. The warning embedded in the process is subtle. Human imagination thrives on mystery, but mystery can mislead. The more incomplete the evidence, the more powerful our projections become. The fragments themselves were harmless. The danger was in the stories humans constructed around them. AI did not erase imagination, but it redirected it. It allowed the past to speak with authority, shifting the narrative from speculation to substance. The Babylonian hymn reminds us that theories are temporary. They emerge in the space between silence and understanding. They are essential for inquiry, but fragile when evidence becomes available. And once AI restores clarity, the past can finally assert its own voice, correcting the guesses, assumptions, and misreadings of generations. In the end, the myths and theories surrounding the tablets were never truly the message. They were the echoes of human curiosity, desire, and imagination. The fragments waited patiently. Humans projected, and now, finally, the song speaks for itself, offering insight, clarity, and a new kind of warning, not about Babylon, but about how we interpret what we do not yet understand. Stay tuned. A future with more. The Babylonian hymn returned after 3,000 years, but for once, humans don't get the credit. Machines do. Their complex ability to detect patterns and interpret ancient texts has given man quite some catching up to do. For one of the first times, the past spoke, faster and clearer than we could have imagined. AI is no longer just a tool. It is a force that reshapes how we uncover, interpret, and preserve history. It can reunite fragments scattered across continents, suggest sequences never noticed by humans, and reveal texts long thought lost. Every tablet, scroll, and inscription is now a candidate for reconstruction. The possibilities are limitless, but with that speed comes responsibility. Human judgment remains essential. Machines suggest, humans decide. Yet the speed of revelation risks prioritizing coherence over nuance, efficiency over reflection. Authority is no longer determined by possession or traditional expertise alone. Digital reconstruction challenges the very structures that have defined scholarship for centuries. Museums, historians, and educators must navigate this new terrain carefully. One misstep, one unexamined reconstruction, can reshape narratives before scrutiny catches up. The warning of the hymn is not in its content. Babylon spoke of order, pride, and caution. The warning is in its method of return. AI is accelerating discovery, connecting fragments faster than humans can process them. History is no longer patient. It moves at machine speed, and those studying it must learn to move just as fast. The past will not wait for deliberation. AI reveals what humans cannot see alone. Entire lost works resurface. Previously invisible layers become legible. Fragments from distant collections speak as one. The speed of reconstruction challenges skepticism, reshapes authority, and tests the ethics of interpretation. What was once a slow, cautious discipline now exists in an accelerated, high-stakes environment. The lesson is clear. The past is responding to the present in ways we did not anticipate. The hymn is a symbol of both possibility and responsibility. It demonstrates that AI can amplify human curiosity, extend our reach, and resurrect voices from millennia ago. But it also reminds us that speed can obscure caution, patterns can mask uncertainty, and power can shift quietly to those controlling digital reconstruction. The warning is modern. It is ours to heed. The hymn returned to show that history, once patient and deliberate, now moves with urgency. AI is rewriting the rules of scholarship, accelerating discovery, and demanding vigilance. The past can speak, and it is speaking faster than we can fully comprehend. Now the question, will we listen wisely, or will we be swept forward by the speed of revelation? That's it on our topic. What other changes do you think AI has in store for the world? Let's hear from you in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.